Salams and welcome. Thank you for joining me in part number 39 of The Way to the Quran by Khurram Murad. May Allah SWT reward the author abundantly. May Allah SWT also reward the Pretoria North Muslim Educational Institute for giving out free copies of this wonderful book on the occasion of the inauguration of Masjid-Sulaiman in Pretoria North in South Africa. May Allah SWT also reward the Islamic Foundation from Leicestershire, UK, and Brother Haris Ahmed for giving me permission to read this book as part of my book reading club, right? And this is The Way to the Quran. So we look at the chapter on the rules of reading the Quran, how much to read, when to read, and so forth, right? And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, don't try and read the Quran in less than 3 days. In the preferred option is if you can manage, if you got the strength, you got the time, the minimum is 7 days. And the tradition many people follow is 30 days. That is why the Quran has been divided into 7 hizb or 7 groups and 30 juz of the Quran. Some people will read 1 juz a day, and in that way they complete the entire Quran in 30 days. Some people can't do that. Some people can't do that. I know myself, I struggle. I cannot do it in 30 days. And I try and read it from one Ramadan to another Ramadan. I know that's not ideal, but I try and read it that as long as I finish the Quran before the next Ramadan. So I try and read it slowly until I get to the end of it. May Allah SWT forgive me my errors and shortcomings therein, right? In this respect, Al-Nawawi's advice is very sensible. One who can discover deeper meanings by contemplation should read less of the Quran. That means if you are one of those people who wants to try and understand the Quran, then try and read less of it. Some people will say, there can be no fixed answer, and then they will ponder, okay, what does it mean there can be no fixed answer? So they will think about that verse, they will ponder over the verse. Then in that case, there's no point reading it fast, like to say there can be no fixed answer, it will vary from person to person, from situation to situation, the guideline being what so you cannot do it like that, right? Because if you want to ponder, you got to read slowly, like to say one who reads the Quran in less than 3 days does not understand it. You see, in that way there you have a better understanding of what you are reading, right? So in this respect, An-Nawawi's advice is very sensible, and he says the person who can discover deeper meanings by contemplating on the Quran, by pondering over the Quran, by ruminating over the Quran, should then read less of the Quran. Similarly, one who has to devote times in pursuit like education, affairs of government, or important tasks entrusted by Islam may even read less as well, depending on your personal situation. That is in Kitab al-Adhkar. The quantity of reading will vary much depending on the purpose of reading. If you want to spend time with the Quran or get a quick overview, you may read much faster, right? If you just want to get an overview, summary of the Quran, you can read it much faster, and there are people who will read at a much faster rate. Like, for example, the quantity of reading will very much depend on the purpose of reading. If you just want to spend time with the Quran or get a quick overview, you may read faster and faster, and therefore much more. But if you want to ponder and reflect, you may read much slower and therefore read much less of the Quran. This is what Al-Ghazali means when he quotes someone as saying, I complete the reading of the Quran sometimes on every Friday, sometimes every month, sometimes every year, and in one type of reading I have been trying to complete it for the last 30 years, but have not even been able to do so, as what we read in Ihya Ulumuddin. Under our present circumstances, I think most of us should aim to finish a general reading of the entire Quran at least once every 8 months. This should not take more than 5 to 10 minutes or 5 to 15 minutes every day, depending on whether you understand the meaning of the Quran directly or through a translation. But at least on a few occasions in your lifetime, you should also attempt to finish one reading in 7 days or in 1 month, like as we do especially in the month of Ramadan. Some time should also be devoted to reading slowly with pondering and reflection, though not necessarily on a daily basis. Right? When to read the Quran, this is the next section under the rules of reading of the Quran. Join me in the next episode, which is episode number 40, on how much of the Quran to read, how to read it, when to read it, and so forth. So the Quran, we are always guided by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. Read as much of the Quran as may be easy for you. Stay well, look after yourself. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.